through all these leftists who are talking about the same talking points they want echoed from the politicians who want to do the same. This isn't a gun problem. It's a people problem. And you know it. Guys, on September 11th, 19 terrorists with box cutters killed over 3,000 people in this country. Let's stop with the propaganda and focus on the real issues here. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Prep Life. Let's talk about this unfortunate circumstance that took place in Nashville, Tennessee. This active shooting that involved a female that came into a school, wound up killing 3 children and 3 adults. I want to be sensitive about this situation because it just happened. A lot of people start activating their social media, talking about it, pushing out videos and everything else. And some of that justification I get, especially when you're trying to, communicate to people about the circumstance of the event. But a lot of this is put out before even the parents of the children or of the loved ones that were killed in the event have been notified. I mean, these things happen rapidly. And now in the national media especially, these national media organizations are chomping at the bit to politicize this. Politicians are using these media action arms to push their propaganda, and it turns into a real mess. I don't like getting involved in that mess. My guidance to my company is let's just take a breath. Let's just relax. Let's figure out what's going on. Let the loved ones get notified of what happened. Let's get some information out there. And I think right now it's an appropriate time to talk about it. The city of Nashville Police Department just released the footage from the body-worn cameras from the officers who responded to this active shooting, and it showed them meticulously clearing from first floor to second floor this school, locating and isolating the suspect that was shooting out of a window and taking her out. The bravery, the competence, the courage these men demonstrated was amazing, to say the least. It is what a great example of law enforcement training and execution looks like in real time. The head guy, the officer, they called him Rex, was somebody who was very calm, collected. I noticed in the video he took a lot of cues, took the time to receive the information from one of the teachers, I believe, that was on the school grounds that was relaying very intelligibly, very clearly communicating the intelligence that she knew of where this potential shooter was. What I also did notice about this school is this school, as they were clearing through the classrooms, didn't have many students in these classrooms, meaning they had a specific protocol. I even saw some videos where students were being extracted on buses, which tell also a side of the story that's often not described. So here's what we know. We know a female who has been labeled transgender. I am mentioning that because the media has mentioned that, but she is a biological woman, took several firearms deliberately from a pre-planned manifesto, decided to hit this target, which was specifically a soft target, not a hard target. In fact, there's some justification to outline that she didn't hit the other target because of their security protocols. Went into the school shooting. She actually shot through the glass of the doors to make entry and then killed 3 children and 3 adults. This manifesto laid out the intent. She did so with a deliberate plan, even casing the school beforehand, knowing the layout. I don't know how they identified that. That's coming from law enforcement officials, likely a sketch or something like that. And she used, according to the media, 2 AR-style weapon systems and a semi-automatic pistol. It's been called an assault pistol again, but it's a semi-automatic pistol. Now, from the video I saw, it looked like looked like a Kel-Tec-style pistol, something that's likely chambered in a pistol caliber, which wasn't an AR, and then used an AR as well. She had all 3. I suspect here she deliberately targeted the teachers and winded up killing the students. The reason I say that is because she had plenty of ample opportunity to kill more students, but she didn't do that. And then set herself up in a position on the second floor shooting down at arriving police officers, and then was taken out by the swift actions of brave men in this situation. They were all men who put on their gear, pulled out their AR platforms out of the back of the patrol vehicles they were in. The lead had an AR platform. It also looked like he had a variable magnified optic, likely a vortex. It looked like a vortex to me. And then led the way. He could have been the sergeant. He could have been a supervisor of some sort. He could have been the one trained on active shooter. They had a protocol. They had a process, and they executed that process flawlessly. They were in a position where they had to do, according to the body-worn camera, single man clears. In a corner-fed point of domination, where you only have one point of domination, where you clear most of the room and one step in the threshold, they did what they had to do, and they weighed speed as security and moving to the sound of gunfire, which is the right thing that you do in an active shooting. You are going to make tactical errors that don't fall in line with principles of security, and they did so sacrificing potentially their life, moving to the sound of gunfire to stop an active threat from killing more innocent people. Again, kudos to those guys. Let me take the time for a second and tell you the correlation and contrast between two separate events that happened within a 24-hour period in Tennessee. On one hand, you had 6 children that tragically died in a motor vehicle accident. 6 children. Their car they were traveling in winded up flipping out of control, ejecting their poor bodies out of the vehicle, and they all suffered traumatic injury that cost them their life. The male and female that were both driving and in the passenger seat both survived. The passenger seat, which was the female, I assume maybe was the mother or a guardian, was in critical condition, and the driver had minor injuries. But all 6 children perished in that accident. The question is, Mike, what does that have to do anything with 6 innocent people dying in an active shooting? Here's the correlation. You have 6 innocent lives that were lost in an accident. The actions, the indecision, the decisions, all of the variability, all the things that happened. The difference is it was an accident. But we have laws in place to protect people, sometimes from themselves. These laws include wearing restraints in vehicles. You have to wear a restraint. These regulations and laws include driving a certain way and abiding by laws that are traffic laws that you see on highways and roads in America. In fact, it's against the law to not wear a seatbelt in this country. You'll get a minimum of a fine if you're found to not have a seatbelt on. But in this case, for some reason, these children, bypassing all of the indications of setting them up for success, the literal seatbelts were in the vehicle. There are laws that were created. They didn't wear them. And when that car flipped out of control, they paid for that mistake via their parent or guardian. They passed away tragically. The correlation in an incident that involved an active shooter killing 3 innocent children and 3 adults that were innocent include laws and regulations that we have on the books. The gun-free zone. You're not allowed to have a gun on most institutions' properties in this country. We also have laws against assaulting and murdering people. But when a person has decided because of their mental health instability, they're going through a crisis, whether short in duration and a rampant rage of violence or a deliberate, long thought out process where they've lost their mind. Evil people do evil things on this planet, in this country. So they decided on their own accord that they were going to take human life. I don't know the motivation, but I know people are hurting in this country. Suicide, overdose, crime, homelessness, even shootings are up across the entire country. The first thing that most people will default to, because it's easy, you don't have to think, you don't have to dig in the weeds, is let's go after the guns. And the national media and the politicians certainly have already. But they're lying when they're telling you guns are the issue. Guns are not the issue in this country. People are the issue in this country. But not just people, because sometimes people make mistakes. The father that I assume was driving the car where his children were not restrained made a gross mistake. He'll live with that mistake for the rest of his life. He might even be charged for reckless homicide, maybe even manslaughter. But when you take somebody who is hell-bent on conducting acts of violence against innocent people, no matter the tool, they will do whatever's necessary to take human life. And that's what happened here. Now, we should know what were the motivations. Ideologically, mentally, psychologically, what were the reasons and in that person's mind justifications for ending human life so negligently, so violently, so traumatically? Here's an interesting thing we should wrap our heads around. How about instead of focusing on policy that focuses its efforts on a tool used for the destruction of human life, we focus on policy that protects our children in schools no matter what? Because the collaboration here between parents and outsourcing their education is when I put my children in your hands, whether it's a private business, a private school, or a public school, should take care of my child. There are more security in most states at Walmart in the parking lot than there are in their schools. Right now, 28 schools have got on board with arming teachers. I think about this because it's relevant in the conversation. If any of those teachers were armed in that school because they were simply trained, just as the law enforcement officers who were trained at a patrol academy and active shooter training went in to save the day and prevent more human life from being taken, if one teacher was armed, they could have stopped that shooting instantaneously. If we had a security protocol in place at the institution that was more robust to deal with the worst case scenario and not the everyday routine, we wouldn't be talking about this. Or if we invested like we invest in our banks, as your taxpayer dollars invest in politicians being protected by arms, by security protocols in institutional buildings, as the Walmart parking lot gets in the roving patrol of a security guard. Your money in your bank is better protected than your children and your institution you've outsourced, and that's a problem. So the start point here is, yeah, we could talk about guns. And Colin Noir and all these people that are very educated on the statistics coming from a legal perspective can educate you about the nuances that matter. Like more guns are used to commit suicide than they are in violent acts. But they won't tell you those numbers because they have an agenda. You get rid of the AR-15s and what do you have left? The pistols. Pistols are mostly used to commit crimes of violence, especially inner city violence. Take away the guns. I just watched a video somebody sent me in Ottawa, in Canada, where a person was stabbed to death with a knife in broad daylight, a random person, because that person couldn't defend themselves from a random person with a knife, a screwdriver, a car, name it. Guys, on September 11th, 19 terrorists with box cutters killed over 3,000 people in this country. Let's stop with the propaganda and focus on the real issues here. The number one issue that we can get behind is we need to protect our children in institutions that we outsource. I don't care if it's your local daycare or your local public school. The conversations that you could affect now are in your own backyard by talking to your mayor, your sheriff, your superintendents, everybody involved in the process of creating legislation to make change in your school district. You need to be talking to them right now. What are we doing to protect them? Because politicians in your own state are better protected than the children that are going to the same schools that are public schools in that state. And that's an issue. I'm thankful that there are heroes that are willing to go into harm's way to stop these evil acts of terrorism, of hate, of evil. But this isn't going to stop, guys. This has been the nature of people throughout time. The difference is we're more disproportionately segued and separated from what we know and hold dear as core values and principles and character than we've ever been. So what is the virtue you stand on? If you don't belong to a church, you don't belong to a strong family unit, the list goes on. Because you have a loss of purpose, you're into drugs, you're taking testosterone, not understanding what it could potentially do to you. You're disaffected from your family, you're taking drugs, you're mentally unstable, and you don't know how to get help. All of the socioeconomic issues that we're facing as a country are going to lend themselves to what we're seeing now, an escalation of issues, of social issues that are going to translate to more violent actors doing more violent things. You know how you stop somebody with evil? Intent, violent acts, and an active shooting? How those Nashville police officers did. There's only one way. And that sucks to hear. So you could talk all you want in the comments and the DMs, all about you need reform, you need gun control, you need to take them away, we need to do something, because I saw all of that. The scariest part about all of that is how misinformed human beings are in buying to the rhetoric and propaganda through all these leftists who are talking about the same talking points they want echoed from the politicians who want to do the same. This isn't a gun problem. It's a people problem. And you know it. Take away the gun, they'll use a vehicle and mob over everybody. They will find a way. Evil people don't follow your laws. Evil people don't follow your laws. She certainly didn't. We're talking to some superintendents and managers in our own backyard when it comes to protocols for security. I have an appointment with my daycare for my children to navigate their security protocol because I want to make sure the institution that is taking care of my kids, especially as a private business, has a protocol and plan from everything from first aid to AEDs, cardiovascular events, to fire, natural disaster, to the worst case, an active shooting. The systemic problem in this culture is not active shootings. It's the breakdown of our culture by being woke. I don't want to know what was going through her head at the time, but we could put together the pieces that could help us understand what happens to people that lose purpose, that lose their identity, that don't understand what's going on in their lives and feel desperate enough to pick up arms, to pick up a tool and take human life. It's a tragic circumstance. I hope we can learn from it. I'd love to hear you guys' feedback and comments below, especially if you saw the video. We'll put the link for the Nashville Police Department video down below. Those men that went into that school are freaking heroes. I love you guys. I'm proud of you. Thanks for being a shining example of what right looks like. And thanks for preventing the loss of more human life. Get out right now in your own backyard and make a difference by campaigning to have security in all schools across this country. If you have children in those schools, it's your job. If you're an advocate for the Second Amendment, it's your job. That's what we could do to fix this. That's how the good guys win and the bad guys lose every single time. I appreciate you guys. Till next time. Thanks, guys.